From an old pair of slippers to a heated blanket size XL with all its electric accessories, here are the 10 craziest things ever found in a snake's belly. Let's get started. Burmese pythons are giant snakes capable of swallowing very large prey, such as an adult antelope or a large crocodile for example, but sometimes their appetite turns out to be much bigger than their stomachs, and some of their meals are indigestible, to say the least. It is the case to say it about this poor Houdini, a Burmese python of more than 3.5 meters which weigh more than 27 kilograms. The unfortunate reptile had a bad idea to ingest a prey with, let's say, extremely tough skin. For Houdini ate nothing more and nothing less than a large heating blanket with its power cord and its power box. The blanket had literally wrapped itself around the intestines of the poor snake, which miraculously was still alive. Houdini was finally rescued by the veterinarian, who removed this cumbersome object from his stomach. The relieved python promised to look twice before swallowing a furry creature, lest it becomes part of the furniture of the house. Despite their gigantic size and incredible strength, reticulated pythons rarely attack humans. Being able to reach 9 meters long and weighing more than 140 kilograms, this reptile prefers to feed on wild boar or large deer, much less dangerous and much more copious than humans. But where these kinds of snakes abound, it happens that tragic incidents are unfortunately reported, and that big reptile bite human Big Macs. In Indonesia, for example, reticulated pythons are very common, especially near palm oil plantations, which are their favorite hunting grounds. It is therefore not uncommon to hear in these regions of attacks targeting imprudent farmers, like the poor farmer who was found inside the stomach of one of these crawling monsters. The poor man, who had been missing for more than 24 hours, was thus found inside a 7-meter-long reticulated python. The giant snake was discovered by the villagers in a ditch, where he was quietly digesting his sad meal. And if you like this video, don't forget to give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive all notifications. Let's keep going. When a snake tries to devour another snake, the spectacle is totally bewildering. Judge for yourself with this picture, where you can see a large snake about to finish swallowing a smaller one, which is trying to eat it. But there is no need to get our brushes tangled because the surreal scene you see in this picture is a common saurian meal for a snake. Indeed, what you are actually looking at is a snake making a large lizard its dinner. You can clearly distinguish the saurian through the shape and color of its eyes, which have nothing to do with those of a snake. The poor iguana was probably passing too close to the large crawling reptile that then threw itself towards him before swallowing his headlong, allowing him to take final but futile revenge with his bite. We have seen that snakes can literally have eyes bigger than their bellies, and as is often the case, they pay for it in a very painful way. And that's what happened to this poor little horned viper, who tried to swallow prey that was much tougher than it looked. The unfortunate reptile had indeed decided to diversify its menu of the day by attacking a large bark beetle barely a few centimeters smaller than him. The horned viper, measuring 20.3 centimeters, was thus delighted with its meal of millipedes, which had grown to 15.4 centimeters in size. But this difference in size was fatal to the small viper, as the large myriapod literally made its way to freedom through its intestines. The large armored worm in its shell had survived inside the venomous snake, just long enough to shred its internal organs and scaly skin. And even though this valiant millipede could not resist the viper's overpowering venom, it nevertheless managed to get its head out through the wound it had opened with the force of those terrible sharp hooks. If you have a phobia of the big Amazonian anacondas, you certainly haven't yet seen their distant ancestors from the Paleocene era, the so aptly named titanoboas. This crawling monster could easily reach 15 meters long for an impressive weight of almost 2 tons, and like all big snakes, it had a gargantuan appetite, to say the least. The titanoboa thus stuffed itself with alligators, big fish, and crocodiles, but it is very probable that it also hunted big prey on the ground, like its direct descendants, the boa constrictors, or their more distant cousins, the giant anacondas of South America. This prehistoric snake could attack a prey the size of a large cow and easily swallow it whole. The fossils of this colossal reptile were found in a very large open-pit mine in Cerrejón, Colombia, in the same equatorial forests where its terrible anaconda descendants now spread terror. Before continuing, it is time to answer the question of the day, and today it is about general culture. This video is mainly about big snakes, but how big is the smallest snake in the world? Is it option A, 10 centimeters, option B, 15 centimeters, or finally option C, 20 centimeters? Think carefully and write what you think is the right answer in the comments. Answer just before the end of the video. Snakes are not animals with very sharp eyesight, and could even be described as being very short-sighted or nearly blind. However, this does not prevent them from being professional hunters, since they have powerful infrared detectors in their sensory dimples, which detect the heat that their prey emits. But when they are inert prey or give off little body heat, snakes can make gross errors of apprehension. Like this small pine snake, over 120 centimeters tall, who decided to invite himself for dinner at Lynn and Carmen Clark's chicken coop in Gainesville, Florida. The nasty little snake, probably looking for young, doddering chicks to munch on, had to settle for what seemed to be 2 raw eggs lying on the floor, so he swallowed them just as gulpily as if they had hatched. But the unfortunate snake, myopic as a mole, did not distinguish that it was not hen's eggs he was swallowing like this, but 15W bulbs. The Clarks had indeed just changed them because they had just died, and they had forgotten them on a corner of the floor. The old couple of chicken farmers finally spotted the poor snake, whose flanks were terribly deformed by the blisters, and who could no longer move. It took a whole team of veterinarians 45 minutes of surgery to remove the blisters from the poor snake's belly. The latter must have thought that it was not a very bright idea to stuff himself with light bulbs for dinner. As we have seen, snakes are not spoiled by nature as far as their visual acuity is concerned. And this genetic defect does them little good when they are looking for food, especially when they start to mistake objects for prey. The unfortunate python you see in this sequence has swallowed a slipper. Yes, you heard right. This poor snake has indeed such a weak sight, that he literally confused an old pair of slippers belonging to his master with a rat. The python, who obviously has a weakness for rodents, hastened to swallow the size 44 slipper anyway before it got stuck in his stomach. Just like its blister-eating predecessor, a surgical operation was necessary and will have lasted more than an hour on the 2-meter python. It was carried out by an experienced veterinarian who removed the big booty from its belly. Fortunately, thanks to the doctor's expertise, the snake was finally saved from certain death. Large snakes are naturally interested in large prey, but they still need to be able to digest it well. But when a python almost 3 meters long swallows a huge Cape porcupine with thorns up to 50 centimeters long, indigestion is really not far off. This poor South African python had to starve to dare to attack an animal as dangerous as a porcupine. And although he was able to ingest this large spiky rodent without injury, the real problems began once the animal was ingested. In fact, the porcupine's spines were so long and hard that they perforated the intestinal wall of the poor python, leading it to a very slow and particularly painful death. The animal was eventually removed from the belly of the large reptile, which, as you can see in the pictures, was severely damaged by the extremely sharp spines. This last meal had more spiciness than this poor hungry python could tolerate. It is not uncommon in the wild to see a python, or any other snake of equivalent size, attacking a crocodile and making its 16-hour snack. Their imposing size and musculature allow them to easily defeat prey as ferocious and powerful as freshwater crocodiles. The images you see on the screen show us thus, a huge olive python feasting on a small Australian freshwater crocodile. The incredible pictures published on Facebook show the meal of the python, almost 4 meters long, rolling up on the poor crocodile to crush it with the Herculean strength of its muscles. This deadly embrace will ensure the snake that its prey will remain inert when it swallows it, and will therefore not risk injuring it. Then follows the incredible swallowing operation, where the python will unhook its jaw in order to swallow its prey whole. Very quickly, only the tail of the poor freshwater saurian remains, which is pitifully sticking out of the snake's gaping mouth, until it disappears completely and is drowned in its gastric juices. In this incredible sequence captured in India, you can see that the ferocious appetite of snakes is without comparison in the entire animal kingdom. Many legends indeed speak of the incredible ability of anacondas and other pythons to swallow gigantic prey, such as water buffaloes or even young hippos. Knowing the surprisingly extensible capacity of its powerful jaws, one can only give credit to these legends. Indeed, we all know that pythons, boas, and anacondas are real bottomless pits when it comes to feeding, and that they are able, as we have seen, to swallow anything and everything. Look at this huge Indian python, more than 6 meters tall, with its flanks ready to explode under the pressure caused by its last dinner. The reptile had indeed managed to swallow an entire adult antelope, with its horns and hooves. The poor animal was probably grazing quietly on some grass when it was attacked by the python, which swallowed it whole. But the snake soon realized that this prey was a little too big for its poor stomach, which literally cracked under the load. The python was so inflated by this copious meal that its scaly skin, although very robust, cracked as it stretched beyond its capacity of resistance. This antelope thus had its posthumous revenge on its predator, since the reptile also died, having been unable to regurgitate it in order to save its skin. So, what do you think of those 10 totally insane things that were found in the stomachs of those big, voracious snakes? Which of them impressed you the most? Give us your feelings in the comments. For the answer to the quiz, it is answer A, and it is the Leptotyphlops carli, a species of snakes that measures barely 10 centimeters and is as thin as a sprig of spaghetti. I hope that many of you have found the answer.